undo your tracks, angle it out, and slide it up. That's it. When you start a seat or vehicle and you haven't done it for the first time, you're gonna wanna cut it. Even if you've done a few of them, you're gonna wanna cut it all up. It's better that you don't, especially if it's a vehicle you haven't done, because you're gonna need to place all the pieces back together. And a lot of these cushions and lean backs are slightly different. They look identical, but once you put it on, you'll see the difference in it. It'll lean to the left or lean to the right too much, or just not look right, or wrinkled and stuff. So you try not to cut everything off so you can know what parts go back to the exact same seat you were working on. These right here are the airbag sensors. Just pop those off. Nothing's really gonna happen. Unless you really have to disconnect it, I would not disconnect them at all. Just keep them the way they are. Some of these knobs will have clips on the inside that you can hardly see. So if you have access to really good pick tools, that's what these are called. The really good ones will have like this little handle so you can grip it better, and they won't come off from the actual grip. Using a Torx bit. A lot of the Fords will have those on their covers when you're removing them. So it's good to keep like a set like this. They'll vary from sizes to sizes. So it's not always on the cab, so it'll be like removing airbags or something that's real metal and real heavy duty that requires a little bit thicker. It's good to carry those or carry some of these. They fit in like hard to reach places. Those come in handy every now and then. This one was easy. Usually there's a clip on the inside. You have to get in there, fold it out, pull it out. This one was really easy. All right, so here's that clip I was talking about. So with the pick tool, if you couldn't get in there, just slide that pick tool in there and hook it in and pull it out. But this one came right out. So that's usually how it looks like. Something like that. On the inside, it's got like a groove in there. So these little clips will, once they get in there deep enough, it'll just lock in place. Now these are just hooked. Sometimes there'll be a secondary piece on the inside that clip in. If you have a steamer, it was good to just heat it up real quick because that'll allow it to flex and pop right off. If it's a cold day, chances are if you manhandle it too much, it'll just break those clips and you'll have a gap there. So if you really look for detail and you notice that, the customer is not going to be happy with that. So what I'll do, I'll tend to stick the dual tool in there. Try not to stick your hand in any of these places because a lot of these metal pieces are razor sharp, and without you knowing, you'll cut yourself. And it's such a quick cut. By the time you realize that you got blood all over the seat, blood all over yourself, and just one of those little cuts that never close. Some of these will have sensors, seat heaters. This little cut inside is made for what they call a climate control unit or climate control system. So that'll be literally, there'll be a hole there, and on the inside will be specialized foam that'll help circulate the air. This is the impact that I use. It's really good, it's really strong. The battery lasts forever. But you just gotta be careful when you're retightening these bolts because it has so much torque on it. It'll snap these things right off if you're not careful enough. So if you have a smaller impact, that'll probably be better to use if you're not used to it. There's the bag. That's basically all it is. Sometimes you can disconnect it from here to help you access it better. So this one has the orange clip. It's a little bit slightly older. So all you got to do is give a little pressure and it pops out. And then it'll detach itself from the actual bag, as so. And there are pins on there, so you know exactly how to put it back in, so you can't force it to put it in upside down backwards and cause that bag not to work properly. That's how it looks like. Some of these are actually bigger, some of these are in canisters, but this one's just a small one. And it'll basically be the same thing when you have your overhead airbags or your side impact airbags. It's basically all it is. If you're working on a table like mine that doesn't have any carpet, it's good and it's bad. It's good because these tracks tend to catch on anything, and if you're looking already, it's already kind of getting warped and stuff. It just happens. You just got to keep an eye on that. You don't drag it too much. But if I did have material on the table, it would catch on that, rip them, bend them, cause a little bit of a problem. Now here is where I like to relieve some of the pressure on it, just enough so I can get the cover to come off. With the leather or whatever the kit is, it'll stretch over that a lot easier than what I'm doing right now. It's just, this is cloth. Some of the headrest posts, they actually have the holes pre-cut and then they place in the headrest posts. So when you're trying to remove them around there, you're probably not gonna be able to do it. And trying to get the headrest posts out, it can be a little tricky. So what I do is I apply slight pressure down and I just expand the hole a little bit more. Just enough so that way it'll unwrap itself around it a lot easier. And you see how small the little holes are? And the square is that big, you're not gonna be able to get that out there unless you rip it. And ripping it may cause the headrest post to break. So on these, I would take a razor and just slice them down. But if you're not doing this a lot, I don't recommend that because usually there'll be sensors in the actual lean backs. And that sensor will tell the computer whether or not there's someone that's heavy enough for that airbag to deploy onto them. If it's not in the seats, they're in the tracks. And it's just a weight sensor. But if you're starting, I'm just gonna remove all the hog rings out. Just grab them by the tip and just twist them. They'll pop right out. They don't all do that. And sometimes you'll take some of the material with you. It's just the way the foam is. Grab them, twist and pull. So now that I got the lean back off, let's just put on the leather. These will usually tell you where the airbag tag will let you know which side it is. So if it's on the outside, it's driver's side. If it's on the inside, it's obviously the passenger side. And then you look inside. There's the airbag that we're gonna replace the canister with. Same holes, same everything, it's basically identical. You just gotta flat it in the same way you took it out. Now, these covers usually go on real good, but like I said, if you have a steamer, it's way better. You just put some steam in them and they get really flexible, really pliable, especially in the cold. When they're cold, they don't tend to stretch and they don't like to play very nice. But once they're heated up, they're nice and flexible, they're loose, and you have less of a chance of ripping something or having zipper blow out, which is like worst case scenario, but it does happen. So these will have little marks on them everywhere. So if you're installing something for the first time, just look on the marks on the cover, and they're usually set to line up with the actual foam, so you know exactly where to place them. They won't always be perfect, but it gives you a good, idea of where to place them. That way you don't place it too far to the left or the right, because if you do that, it'll throw everything off. And if you force it, it'll cause a bubble in there, and then you're gonna have to start all over again. So I'll line up the edges, make sure they're pretty much even. I don't always go off of that because that can be wrong, but it helps you get a good idea of where to set it. And I'll set the middle first. That way, if I don't have a hog ring gun, which I don't, the cover won't shift on me. It'll just stay right there, and I know it's centered. And I just finish off the other two. That one's set. Start on the other side. So once it's set, depending on the cover, you either want to pull it down or you want to keep it right where it's at. On this particular one, we're going to keep it right where it's at. And the reason why I say that is sometimes the top will be a little loose or be a little tight. By applying the pressure down, you can stretch that cover over and it'll look nice and tight, and it'll get rid of any wrinkles you might have later on. But like I said, it just depends on what the cover is, what the vehicle is. Once you got that going, line up the Velcro if it's got it. What I like to do is make sure that I'm pretty much on there, right where their old impression is. You want to line it up. And now the covers aren't always going to be identical to the cloth, but there'll always be little things there that you can use as guides so you can make sure that it forms a lot better. Just pretty much just roll it over. Continually placing your fingers right at the end so you can make sure that every piece stays where it's supposed to go, because if not, and let's say it's like this, you're gonna roll it over and you're gonna have that. But if you have your fingers in there applying the pressure all at the same time, you get a nice tight finish like that. All right, so now, let's get the airbag. Just slide it right into the pocket. Make sure the holes stick out. You should try to make it to where it's basically the same way it was when you took it out. I mean, because you can put it on it, but if the things are folded, I mean, it may compromise the bag. But it's always good that you just take your time putting the airbags back on. Now you see how in the inside, everything's fitted so it'll go right back exactly the way it is. So you make sure you have a proper connection. And then you get the clip. Now if this clip is loose, and this goes for every single airbag, the airbag light will come on. This has a tiny little sensor that knows that it's not locked in place because it can work itself out, and it will. I clip those on, and that'll give that impression on the back end side. If not, it'll just be like flush and loose, and customers will be like, why is that loose? It's because it's not clipped. These will come on so that way they don't catch on anything, because this will catch on this foam real quick and just start causing all kinds of havoc. All right, now that's the purpose of the Velcro, so that can attach on. I don't do that yet. I like to zip it up first. That way you can tuck the zipper and clean up the bottom parts. Now these zippers, I'm not a big fan of the design, but they said it's to keep the zipper from blowing out or from working itself out. It just makes it more difficult to zip. So if you have a pick tool with a hook, you can use that to get in there. It makes it a little bit difficult. I like to use the hog ring pliers because it grabs the tip real nice and it frees up your hand, so you don't have to really concentrate on a little pick tool. You're using your entire hand to pull that zipper down. The pick tools will tend to get on that hook and then they'll just rip it right out, because this isn't really strong metal if it is metal. Blowouts happen when there's a lot of pressure pulling out on both ends and you're forcing that zipper and the zipper's not able to grab it and clip all the little teeth. So what you might want to do is pull the pressure off of it, like pulling the cover together, and it'll help that zipper just slide right down like you're doing now. If not, it's gonna want to do one of those. It just doesn't want to go, and that's when people force it and then it just pops. It keeps going all the way up. Repairing them is not easy, but if you pop enough of them, you get pretty good at it. Now that we're still open here, we can clean this up a bit. Now we can pull this forward, Velcro that. And on the side where I didn't remove the plastic, it's going to want to be on the outside, so you just tuck it in there. And once you pull it over, it'll work itself in on its own. You don't always want to take off all the plastic pieces because it's just more work and it's stuff that doesn't really have to come off. That's all set. These are called dikes or just pliers. They come in all sorts of sizes, all sorts of stuff. These handles typically tend to wear themselves off and pull out. They don't usually come like this. I made that. The cheaper version, but I like them because they're sharp. And yeah, when they're smaller like that, it's a little bit harder to grip and twist. When it's just a little bit wider, it tends to work a little bit better. Plus, these are too narrow. Now you'll see right here how the hog ring is kind of pointed up. Those aren't easy to take out. And instead of just trying to twist them, you'll be there trying to twist them all day. Just work them around, kind of like make them roll back to where they look like that. And once they do that, then they just come right off. But if they weren't and they were facing the other way with the mouth open in, then it's a little harder to take out. Now see, this one had the opening, and this is what will happen. You'll be like this, trying to twist them out, and they don't want to come out because that open end is just causing havoc. So you just continually twist it out. That's how they'll come out. If not, you'll be there and start ripping the foam apart. See, this one did it too. Just keep twisting and they'll come right out. Now some of the covers, again, they'll have the tags, but some of them won't. So you just want to look at the similarities on the covers. So you have this carpet, that usually means that that's where the seatbelt goes because it slides in and out of there. So that's what you want to look for if you're not sure what cover you have, if it don't have that tag. Sometimes they'll have similarities down here at the bottom. This will be thinner, that side will be thicker, and vice versa. Well, you'll know it. Or they'll be cut out like this. So that's why I say not to cut up the covers, so that way you have a better idea of what you're about to put on. So you don't put on the wrong cover and have to start all over again. So take the covers, look at them real quick, make sure these are listing rods. Make sure the listing rods are on there. Sometimes they won't be, and you have to come up with another way to put it on. That's very rare. I like to place the cover inside out and look to see where the listings are. Place the cover on, you're good. Another trick that I do, I want to place that listing rod in there, but I can't because it's folded on the other side. Instead of just pulling it and trying to make it to go on there, you may grab the cover because you can't really see what you're doing. So when you put a hog ring gun or the hog ring pliers on there, you might grab something, and by the time you get to the front, it's pinched there. It just does it. I don't know why, I don't know how, I haven't really looked into it, but I know it does it. So what I do is I tend to put it where the listing is easily accessible, like it is right now. So now I can see what I'm doing, and I know I'm grabbing the listing, and I know I'm not grabbing any other material. And again, the marks, center, and then you just center it on your own like that and make sure everything's cool. Center listing. Now the cover won't go nowhere. And again, make sure everything's lined up properly, not too far back, not too far forward, just right in the middle. I'm not always going to put them in the space that they provide because that rod actually goes all the way. It's kind of like a skeletal frame, like in a body. That's what allows the covers to attach to the foam and all that stuff. I like to fold them and complete them. I'll do it sometimes, but not all the time, because once you're working that cover on, it'll tend to work itself out and it'll look like that, and then you'll just have to do it all over again. I like to leave it inside out, because once it's on the seat, I have better leverage to make sure it's a tight fit. Now on these models, you'll want to just push that in there, and by doing so, you're just working against yourself, because you got to keep in mind this is foam, so as I'm pushing, this is all I'm doing. I'm trying to get that cover to go in between that little gap. it's not gonna go. I'm just working against myself. So what I tend to do when I can't remove the actual pan from the frame, I'll just line it up right on the edge and just bend it right in there. Once you do that, just push it in. And use your door tool, this thing, to just push in the material. Try not to grab the vinyl or any leather. Just use the existing clips. That way you won't tear it or make a hole. At the same time, use your body to apply the pressure so it doesn't pop itself out. As you're applying the pressure, you're pushing in, it's going to work itself right in there, and you won't have to work as hard. So now it's in there in the back. We'll work down the back in a minute. So now this is why I have it inside out, because by working it, and if I would have had it folded, it would have been all bunched up anyway. I have to start all over. So by doing that, I do the same technique. Place the fingers inside and just roll it right over it. That way you get a nice tight finish. Again, if you did have a steamer, it would be good to steam these clips, because these are really hard clips because they're designed not to fold themselves out, at least not right away. But we don't, so just line it up with the frame and just use your hand just to roll it right over. Try not to get too like, oh, I'm gonna get in there and just fold it like that. It's gonna cause more trouble than it's worth. Just use the cover in the frame and just roll it right on there. And you hear that clipping, you know it's on there set. On the side pieces, they'll be sewn this way. So they literally have to roll over there, and you don't really have enough room. So you just pull them out, and these you can fold in. Because if not, you're gonna have a lot of trouble trying to roll it in there. That's it. Again, you want to be careful when you're clipping these, because these, you can almost hear how sharp it is. Wrong move, just like I did. Pop yourself once and it'll clip you. It'll cut you real good. And I'll take it, roll it. It'll look ugly, but once you keep forming it, it'll go right to where it's supposed to look. As so. Clip them, put back your stuff. And that's it. Now it's time for the side piece. So on the inside, when you first take it off, you want to take a good look at what you got and a good look at what's on the frame, because there's a lot of pieces on here that allow this cover to attach itself nice and tight and snug. It's not just, you know, one screw here. It's always something else. So on this one, you have this big long piece that's going to have to go into this channel in here. And now that you have leather, vinyl, and additional foam from the actual leather, it's not going to be easy. This one has a handle to recline it, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it back, and it'll allow me to slide this piece in there a lot easier. If it was a automatic seat or a power seat, it's not going to be that easy, but it will go in. It's just going to be a little bit of trouble and a little bit of work, but it will go. Now you see how much room I have now that I've laid it back. We have a spot here for the screw, which is right there. That spot hooks in, but it doesn't hook in from the top, it hooks in from the side, so I literally have to slide it in that way. Now by doing so, I have to make sure this one lines up, which is right here. That one goes in there, and this one up here clips into that one. So it's all that has to go into place, and all has to be sort of one motion in order for it to all hook up. So now you're gonna see me work. Now we're hooked in, and we're also hooked on the back, and we're all hooked on alongside the sides now. You'll know by looking at the gap, it's a nice tight fit, and it's pretty on there. If you don't check it, then it's not going to be on there. This is just a knob. I'm guessing this is for the lumbar. Usually it's back here, but this one is in the front. Just pops right on. Also, a lot of these will look identical, and they'll look like they almost want to fit. If you force it, you're going to break it. So if you look on here, you'll see how it has all the teeth, and then it has like one big beaver tooth right there. It's got a little channel in there, so that's how you know it's perfectly on there. Instead of you putting it on here, forcing it, it'll stay like that. Customer uses it, it'll eat up all those teeth, and it'll just do that. You got to really pay attention to how you put these back on. This one had clips all around, so that one is really easy to put on there. Sometimes, like I said, it'll have a clip on the inside. You got to slide it on there. So as far as the headrest posts go, some people like to use scissors. I like to use the razor blade. But if you're going to use a razor blade, you got to be real careful not going too deep, because you will leave cut marks all around there. You always want to make sure it's pretty centered. So usually on these covers there'll be seams here and seams here. You don't want to go off of the actual headrest posts because they are both different sizes. You can't really tell by looking at it, but it is. So you want to go off of the holes. The holes are always centered, and the headrest posts are either be bigger or smaller, whatever. But the holes are what you want to go off of. So you find the hole, and just use your fingers to determine if it's pretty centered. And it looks like it pretty much is. So now we're going to cut the holes. I like to do a hole and not a square, because if you do a square has corners, and if you pull those corners, they're going to rip, they're going to tear. But a circle is harder to rip and it's harder to pull. It'll just stretch, but it'll go back to its normal shape. When you cut in those headrest posts, you're going to keep an eye out. Now the top section of this is vinyl, so I'm going to make the hole pretty much the size of the headrest post itself, because it will stretch over. Now if it's leather, you pretty much have to come almost to the edge of it in order for you to push it around. When it has the push button on the side, that's the side you want to start on. So this one has it on this side. You start on that side, because if not, the hole is going to tend to grab into the little channel that's right there, and you'll work a little bit harder. That's it, nice tight fit. I like to take the seams and fold them on the inside. I feel like it gives it a nice finish, makes it look cleaner. So before you go to put the seat back in place, take a quick look of everything, make sure everything is set properly. I tend to put the tracks all the way forward so I can see where I'm going, just like when you're taking them out. So the same technique, hand in the back. So you'll start the headrest post first and just walk it in, and as you're walking it in, you let him lean back, graze on this, nice and close. That way you'll know you're not gonna hit the steering wheel, and you're not gonna touch anything else, because now I can see the tracks. Fold it up, and you just gotta lay it back in there. All the whole time watching where these tracks are. Make sure you put the lock mechanism in place. Lock it, and you're done. I like to put the bolts in by hand first. A lot of people will just set them and then put their gun on it. Now that's all fine, but what happens is these threads are so fine that if you didn't wind it in with your hands at least a little bit first, they'll go in sideways, and once the gun is on there, it'll just eat that bolt and it'll go in sideways, and it may or may not go in all the way, and if it doesn't, you're gonna have to take it back out and retap it. That's why I like to run it in a little bit with my fingers. Then I'll put the impact gun on it and finish it off. Again, I'll start with the back bolts first. Get it in there. So you don't got to put too much pressure on it, because again, if you're using an impact gun, it'll snap those bolts right off. And these have a little tab on one and the little lock on the other. That's how you know which way to put them in. I'll run it to the front, and this is where it'll stay. That way I can better access the back, and then I'll get started on the passenger seat.